texture techniques for our Dine art project with acrylic or tempera paint. First, you'll need your paint. You'll need a jar of water, a paper towel or old rag, a paint palette or plate, something to stamp with, and a brush. To start off, add a quarter size of paint to your paint tray. Then dip your brush in the paint and mix in a little bit of water. You'll notice that the paint gets lighter. Take the same paint you were using, mix a little bit more and a little bit more. Every time you do this, the paint will get lighter and lighter and more translucent. You'll be able to see through it. It will no longer be black, it'll be more of a light gray. This is how you'll get multiple shades of gray. The first technique we're going to do is called a wash. You need a large amount of paint and water. Go ahead on your tray, mix in about a good amount of paint and water, and you're going to make a nice sized puddle. You're going to dip your brush in the puddle of paint and water and then drag it across your paper. Don't scrub back and forth, just lay it across. You'll need more water, so as you go, add more. If you want it darker, you can go back in over the top. Keep on placing your strokes down to create an area of flat color. Now, you'll need to go wash out your water. Get yourself some new water, and next we're going to do a grated wash. So this time, the transition is going to go from dark to light. Place your paintbrush in the puddle of paint, drag it across your paper, and then don't dip it back in your paint, dip it in your water, and then drag it across that area again, but just down below the area that you just painted. And then dip in water, drag it again. You'll see that the area gets lighter and lighter as you work your way across the paper. This might take some practice, so try it again. Lay your paintbrush in the puddle of paint and water on your palette. Drag it across your paper. Once you get a nice swipe of paint, dip it in your water jar. Swipe it again directly under the spot that you just painted. Dip it back in the water and swipe again. You'll see a transition from dark to light. Now, we're going to move on to wet and wet. Lay an area of water down on your paper. It can have a little bit of paint in it, but it needs to be nice and wet. Then you're going to dip your paintbrush in some paint or one of the other shades of gray on your palette, and then tap it into the wet area. You'll see that the paint expands and flows. This is called wet into wet because you are dipping a wet paintbrush into a wet spot on your paper. Now we're going to do dry brush. Go ahead and wipe off your paintbrush. Make sure that it feels damp. When you feel it, you will feel that it's not wet, but it's not completely dry. Dip it in your paint and drag it across your paper. You'll be able to see all the little hairs and bristles in your marks. This is called dry brush because the brush is mostly dry. Next, we're going to do stamping. So take some paint and you can paint onto an object, or you can place your object into the paint on your paint palette and get paint all over one side of it. Then you're going to place it on your paper and create a stamp. You can do this with anything. I'm using bubble wrap. You can do this with paper towel. You can do this with sticks. It's kind of up to you. You can do it with Legos. Other objects work really well. Different objects make different marks. And that is stamping. All right, so now we're going to do some splatter paint. The first one I'm doing, I'm laying in an area of light gray. Then I'm going to take my paintbrush, dip it into my paint, and take my fingers and pull the bristles back gently and then let them flip forward. And it will splatter paint all over the area. You'll notice that when the paint hits the wet area on my paper, it expands, kind of like the wet on wet. Then try it on dry paper. It'll have a different look. You have more control if you hold the brush closer to your paper and use a finger to flip the bristles gently. If you sling it, you'll have a big old slosh of paint. So it's kind of up to you. Make sure that you have some kind of protective covering on the surface that you're doing this on, just in case paint gets splattered. There you go. Have fun and try every technique. Go for it.